What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This here is Legitical Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with everything that the government does, folks, and definitely everything that the corporate press does. And this video is more or less about the corporate press narrative that they're trying to put out and less about what Trump actually said. But that's the story that we're covering, is something that Trump is doing. But it's never what Trump is actually doing. It's always the corporate press coverage of what Trump is actually doing. That is the interesting thing, because the corporate press loves to lie about Trump. It's constant. It's like their default position is to just go straight to a lie and don't let Trump gain any traction with American citizens. Try to knock it down before he can get any more supporters. That's what they want. That's their goal. That's what they're trying to obtain, is to put Trump in a box and keep him there and not let him speak, not let him gain more support, because they know if they do, that their corporate press narrative, their bogus BS, is going to be shot down. It's going to be broken apart. Because once the truth gets out there and the people en masse realize that the corporate press has been lying to them on a constant basis about just about everything, then they're going to lose faith in the corporate narrative, and they're not going to buy into that narrative anymore. And any story that comes out after that, any subsequent story that comes out after the people learn of your lies, people are going to be skeptical of anything the corporate press says. And I don't blame the people for being skeptical. I don't see why people aren't more skeptical of the corporate press narrative, given all the Trump hoaxes that have already been laid to bear at this point, right? There's been so many of them. But you got your politicians out there. Some people trust politicians, right? Like, I don't understand why some people will hear a politician say something and just say, yep, that's it. Trump said this, Trump bad, Trump orange man, Trump evil. Orange man is evil. So, yeah. But it just blows my mind. People will just listen to a politician and be like, oh yeah, that's what it is. No, I'm sorry. Why don't you take the time and go listen to what was actually said, instead of just taking somebody's word for it when they could clip something and put it out of context? But they do that on a constant basis. Kind of like the Joe Biden thing, where everybody was talking about Joe Biden was pooping.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J.
Or whatever. A lot of people are saying that. No, I'm sorry. Joe Biden didn't poop his pants. If you watch the full clip, you can see Joe Biden goes to sit down. The announcer comes on and starts announcing. Joe Biden gets confused and thinks he needs to continue to stand back up. That's why he came back up. And then eventually he was like, oh well, fuck it, I'm going to go ahead and just sit down anyway. That's what happened. He wasn't pooping his damn pants. You know, I'm hearing that constantly on the right. People are like, oh, he may have excreted himself.
What?
He probably pooped his pants, y'all. Like, no, come on, dude. Like, pay attention to the clip. Sure, that pose does, toddlers do that, sure. But isn't it more logical to think that, Joe Biden goes to sit down, here's the announcer immediately comes on, and he stops. It looks to me like he's going to sit down. The announcer comes on, he stops, he gets confused for a second, and is like, oh, hang on, I gotta stand back up. So he kind of comes back up, and then he decides, screw it, I'm gonna just sit down anyway. That's the least amount of assumptions to take right there, right? Like, to just assume he's pooping his pants. No, I'm sorry. Sure, that's a low amount of assumptions as well. But that's kind of going overboard with it when you can just say, hang on, he just got confused for a second. He's an 81-year-old man. Of course, both explanations are possible for sure, but it just seems more likely that he got confused versus he pooped his pants. But I'm sorry, I've been going on that for a while. Let's get into the story. Trump floats more tariffs and eliminating taxes on tips. Here's the price tag. Oh, Yeah, they're going to go ahead and get out there and tell you, the American people, exactly how much money we're going to lose if Trump goes through with this plan. But I'm going to go ahead and debunk everything they're going to say just with simple logic. Let's go. The 2024 presidential campaign is in full swing, and former President Donald Trump is making headlines with his economic policy proposals. Eliminating taxes on tips is one he introduced while campaigning in Nevada, aiming to gain support from Americans in the service industry who may directly benefit. Another campaign proposal revolves around expanding tariffs on foreign-made goods. Yes, we know Trump done that his last round. He loves to put tariffs on things. He is a negotiator. Yeah, right? You put a tariff on something, you negotiate with these people, and you get something in return. Which is where the bloodbath hoax come from. Trump was sitting there talking about putting tariffs on all these dirt cheap Chinese electric vehicles, so they're not as cheap to the American people, so the American people don't buy them, keeping the companies here afloat. So Americans don't just start buying these cheap EVs and put American companies out of business. That's the point of tariffs, is to keep people from buying those goods. He doesn't want you to buy those goods because we need to buy American goods. But that's where that bloodbath hoax come from. And now everybody, even Joe Biden himself, is sitting there saying, oh, well, Trump said if he's going to get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath. Which is patently false. Right? Now, technically it's true, but it's patently false because if you leave out the very important context around that, then you're lying. That's an outright lie. Economists and policy analysts crunching the numbers point out that these policies may run up the nation's debt even further without significant offsets. Last week, the former president told a crowd of supporters in Nevada that if elected, he would do away with taxes on tips. The comment came in a state where 22.9% of workers are in the leisure and hospitality industries, many of whom rely on tips. You love how they say that, oh, it's going to put us even into more debt. But, like I said, we're going to go ahead and debunk that with just simple logic. Just common sense would tell you that if you're going to exempt a certain form of income that is not at the present point in time exempt, that means you're going to get less revenue, former U.S. Comptroller General David M. Walker told Straight Arrow News. While Walker doesn't necessarily buy the proposal, he did offer how he would change the way tipped employees are handled in the U.S. I think that what we ought to be doing with regard to waiters and waitresses and those who rely primarily on tips for their income is we ought to be going to the European model, he said. We ought to pay them enough money such that they don't have to rely upon tips in order to be able to have a decent standard of living. Doing away with tips, essentially. That's what they're not telling you. To pay these people a living wage, and then they don't get tips anymore or something like that. That's what it sounds like to me, the European model. Which, I don't know if that's a good idea. I have a friend of mine that works at a local casino, and he makes 3 times the amount that I do, and he makes only tips. That's all he makes. You know, of course, he does. You have to get a certain wage from your employer. He makes like $2.15 an hour or something like that. But he makes a buttload of money in tips. And if you take that away and give him a standard wage, he would probably be making about what I make, cutting his pay to way back. Yeah, I don't think that's such a good idea. The Bipartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget found that Trump's proposal could add between $125 billion and $500 billion to the U.S. deficit over 10 years. Now, you love where they come in with the assumptions on this. They're $125 to $500 billion over 10 years. Right now, where do they come up with that number? You gotta think for a second. Where are they coming up with this number? Gotta make you think, right? They're absolutely basing this on current spending levels, right? And projected spending levels, right? Well, they just take the numbers and project that with inflation. No. I'm sorry. You can't do that and project. That's why I say debunking this with simple logic. Trump isn't going to have the same budget. So those numbers are completely irrelevant. They're ridiculously irrelevant. If you're going to do something like cutting taxes for tips, you know you're going to get less revenue, so you're going to adjust your budget accordingly. Therefore, there might not be a deficit at all. Donald Trump knows the spending crunch that we're in right now. He knows he needs to get the economy back on track. So he knows when he comes in, his budget, it's not going to be a $1.7 trillion deficit. Now, hang on. I know what you might be thinking. Well, Trump added $7 trillion to the national debt. You know what? The vast majority of that came with COVID. Yeah, that was a global pandemic. So, sure, that's a genuine criticism of Donald Trump. Should he have done that? I don't think so. I think that was a very stupid thing to do. However, it may or may not have saved the country. We just don't know what not spending that money would have done. But you also got to think Trump cut taxes in 2017. Therefore, less revenue. So, if the deficits were still less, hang on, yeah, government deficits. That means they were spending a lot less. But it's just funny. They're going to take something Trump said and then tie Joe Biden's budget onto that, project that out for 10 years, and then say, don't vote for Trump because look at what he's going to do. It's just ridiculously stupid. While the prohibition of taxing tips is a relatively new proposal from Trump, tariffs have been in his toolbox since he transitioned from the C-suite to the Oval Office. The Trump campaign said a 10% across-the-board tariff policy would raise billions in revenue to pay for tax cuts, but analysts from center and left-leaning think tanks show it could cost middle-income families between $1,500 and $1,700 per year. Could. They don't say that it will, and they don't say what the benefits could be. They don't say what the benefits to America could be. Sure, he may raise some revenue with those tariffs, but you know what? If people decide that you know the things that Trump put tariffs on cost too much and they buy American instead, that helps American companies. Sure, if they have to spend a little more, so what? We're keeping our money here. We're not spending it abroad, essentially. That makes America stronger. That makes our economy stronger. That makes us better as individuals, in my opinion. If you are going to tariff goods, it is going to affect the price of those goods, and so ultimately the consumer is going to end up paying more as a result of those tariffs, Walker said. The real question is, in exchange for what? Is it going to be in exchange for a tax cut someplace else? So when you look at it from an economic standpoint, it will have an effect on prices, but it's not a tax. But it will have an effect on prices. Duh, we know this. But we also know that Trump loves tax cuts. So is Trump going to actually balance this out? But you can see what Trump is trying to do with these tariffs. He wants people to buy American products. He wants to bring manufacturing back home. He wants these companies, even if they are a foreign company, he wants them to build manufacturing bases in the United States to manufacture those goods here. That's what he wants, to boost our economy, to get us off of the petrodollar, because Joe Biden just screwed that up for everybody. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't seen that deal, that, yeah, the Saudis canceled a 50 years long deal where they're no longer requiring everybody to buy oil in American dollars. That's right. Joe Biden dropped the ball on that. So the petrodollar is about to go bye-bye. These proposals came as the economy and inflation are top issues among voters in poll after poll just 5 months ahead of Election Day. But, you know, I think Trump has a pretty decent plan for the country. And if he brings jobs back to America, if he brings manufacturing back to America, like he says he's going to do, tariff the shit out of these companies, you know, and if they want to build manufacturing bases here, that is great. Cutting taxes on tips is a good idea, in my opinion. Will he be able to even do that? I have no idea how that even works. But I do like the tariffs. I do like the fact that, you know, China can flood the country with cheap goods and then all of our money goes to China. I don't like that. I don't like that whatsoever. I want manufacturing back here in America. I like buying American. I try not to buy cheap Chinese crap. course, it's almost impossible these days. Let me know down in the comments if you try to do that, but you can go to publicsquare.com and you can find a lot of good American companies that have conservative values and all this. I would highly suggest using it. I use it all the time. This is not a sponsored ad, of course, because I'm so tiny on YouTube that it doesn't really matter, and YouTube seems to be forcing me into a box. It's kind of outrageous, kind of aggravating, if you will, but you know, what the hell can I do about that? I have no idea, but I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Do y'all think it's a good idea to stop taxing tip jobs, tips in general? Or do y'all think that's a poor idea? Let me know what you think. That's all I got. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.